In this episode of the Business of E-commerce, I talk with Nate Ginsburg about putting systems and people in place to help you scale your business. This is the Business of E-commerce, episode 105. Welcome to the Business of E-commerce, the show that helps e-commerce retailers start, launch, and grow their e-commerce business. I'm your host, Charles Pulaski, and I'm here today with Nate Ginsburg. Nate is the founder of SellerPlex, where he helps Amazon and other e-commerce retailers grow their business by scaling their supply chain. I asked him on the show today to talk about how you can scale your business by putting systems and people in place. So hey Nate, how you doing today?
Doing good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, doing good. So wanted to make sure, so SellerPlex, is it just supply chain or you guys do finance as well, you were just saying? Or?
Yeah, so we basically, our sweet spot is all the things that need to get done to keep a business running, but are, not really the fun stuff. And so, I believe that as an entrepreneur, it's all of our best opportunity, me, you, all the e-commerce listeners to do what we're best at and double down on where we can add the most value, and then delegate and offload the other areas that are necessary to run the business well, but aren't going to actually grow the business. So that's where we come in. So our services include supply chain, finance, admin, so that you as the owner can double down on growing the business.
Got it. So it goes very well with the show topic then. I love the idea of like putting systems in place. It's one of those things in e-commerce is a business where there's a lot of like repetition, where a lot of things like orders come in and the goal is, 99% of orders follow the exact same path. They do the same thing. Hopefully 99% nothing goes wrong. They just kind of ship. So there's a lot of this like work that just needs to be done every day or multiple times a day. So putting systems in place, e-commerce is like this, like compared to some other businesses like consulting, where everything's almost a one-off. E-commerce, the goal is it's a factory, it's assembly line they just kind of move through, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so a little kind of background on me and the business. So I had my own e-commerce business, started maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And, I'm the kind of person that I'm not good at very many things. And so needed to get help in all these areas that, were necessary and important, but, wasn't particularly good at or didn't want to be good at, for example, the customer service, supply chain, finance, admin, and yeah, that allowed me to, build this business that, was, running very well. Sales were good, business was good, and it allowed me to, it really provided a lot of freedom for me as the owner. I spent a lot of time abroad, so I was living or have been living in like Thailand, Vietnam, traveled all over Europe. And yeah, I think, businesses are one of the best like vehicles to provide freedom for for the owners. And e-commerce businesses, like you were saying, especially true because it's products, like you said, it's a very set, orders come in and, they get fulfilled, and it's, necessarily it's products. And so, yeah, because of that, it, is able to, like the structure of the businesses allows you as the owner to, have like a higher vantage point and, working on the business as opposed to in the business. And yeah, allows you to, generate, financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, which I think is, good and important.
Yeah, I think there's a fine balance too on this, right? Where I feel like when people are just starting off, and I usually talk to one of two extremes. When people are just starting off, I either see them trying to do way too much themselves or almost nothing themselves. And now, like they either try to outsource everything, or outsource nothing. And I feel like there's some sort of balance where, and that changes over time. That balance, right? Where at the beginning you don't have other people or resources, so you kind of have to figure things out. and then over
Hmm.
time you start to have resources and people that, and it changes.
Yeah.
Where do you see that kind of fall?
Yeah, no, totally agree. And it's something, I mean, from my personal experience, when I was starting my business, it's important to do some of the work or be exposed to the work yourself first. So like, finance or supply chain, for example, I'm not like, those are not strengths of mine, and like, nor do I want them to be. But as I was starting my business and it was, starting to kind of grow and take off, like, I was for a while, like I was the one who was at first doing these activities. So I knew, so I understood them enough to know what needs to be done, which then enabled me to effectively, organize and then, hire and delegate out those activities. And, I totally know what you're saying. And, I talk to sometimes people that are, I guess in my experience, they're often people that like, maybe they're coming from maybe like a corporate background where they have some money and, they're trying to get into e-commerce and start their business. And, they just try to, like, they might maybe haven't even, started the business yet, but their approach is just to, try to like throw money at these kind of different areas to get it, like taken care of, when they don't really fully understand, what it is and what needs to be done. And so yeah, I definitely think it's important and ideal to, you just need to, like, as the owner, I think you just need to understand it enough to, you know, need to have some experience to understand it enough to then be able to pick and know, like, if someone is doing the job well, and to be able to like kind of manage that person.
Yeah, and there's certain things that if you don't really know the process, I feel like um, you can run into issues. Where so let's say that bookkeeping, for example, simple example. You know, bookkeeping takes a bunch of time in e-commerce, right? You have a lot of if you have a lot of little transactions, you have to log all of them, categorize that sort of thing. But going through it at least a couple times, I found is valuable because then I was at a point where someone else was doing it. I did it previously. Someone else is doing it, and then you start reading the P and L, and you're like, this seems wrong. Like just something here seems like it's not accounted for the right way. Like just the numbers seem off. And then once you dig in, you can start to see, oh, we're accounting for this incorrectly. Um, but unless you've gone through it at least a bit and have some background to actually, first do the bookkeeping and second to read the P and L, you'll never even catch those mistakes. You have to like take them as face value.
Yeah, totally. And kind of on that point of just the finance and bookkeeping, like if you don't know your numbers, like you don't have a real business. And I see this as a big challenge for a lot of e-commerce businesses, that like bookkeeping and accurate finances, like these are things that they're not going to grow the business. So it's easy to sort of not prioritize. But these are things, and as I'm sure that, you, well, if you don't know your numbers, how can you know what your actual profit is? Like, it's easy. And this was me when my business was first starting, and sales were coming in, our bank account looked okay, and so like that was the metric that I was just kind of gauging off of. But like I had no idea how much we really were making profit. And yeah, like if you want to scale your business and or eventually sell or have like some kind of an exit, it's just like necessary to know, to have accurate numbers, and to and then form decisions. And then to your point about first starting with the accurate books and numbers, and then and like taking the time to look through the P&Ls. Like I'm now a partner in a handful of businesses, and like in all of them, like uh, you know, in college, like accounting was my like least favorite class. Like hated it, didn't like, just like not the way that my, brain kind of likes to operate. But then now, like as a business owner, like I've actually kind of, come around, and like I love looking at P&Ls, like, and because yeah, it really tells you, it gives you like the insights that you need to, make informed decisions, to, run the business effectively and not and not totally implode.
Yeah, I feel like now it's like a relaxing thing. Like all of a sudden, if you have any, it gives you this like level of clarity on. Ah, okay, now I
Yeah.
get it. I can see where everything is. You can see. It's very
Yeah,
different.
yeah. Well, and kind of to add to the point about kind of relaxing and clarity, and it's something that like I know for me in my businesses, like any anxiety around financial things often comes from just like lack of actually knowing what they are. And so it's like, oh, like I think we have, this that we need to pay or coming up and this and cash flow. And like, when you don't actually know what the numbers are, what gets measured gets managed. And so when you're, I don't know, for me at least, like if I ever have, anxieties about cash flow or finance, this or that, when I actually like dig in and actually, get clarity around what those numbers are, um, yeah, like it's like a lot of that, anxiety drops away and just like knowing, I'm a big fan of Ray Dalio and, when he talks about some of the stuff of, principles like, there's nothing to fear from truth and like more truth is better. And so, if you get clarity around what the numbers are, like, yeah, like there might be some challenging decisions that you have to make, but like, what they are, what the situations are. And yeah, that's like, well, better than the alternative where you just don't know and, not sure of, yeah, what the actual situation is.
Yeah, cover your eyes and hope as a business plan. It's usually not the best. Hide in
Right.
the corner. Yeah. So let's say they're doing the good entrepreneur route, right? Where they started the business, they're doing a lot of things themselves, kind of getting in the weeds. They're answering their first support emails. They're doing their bookkeeping, um, doing all kind of the day to day, right? Order fulfillment, doing kind of all that. Where when you want to start saying, okay, now I'm spending a lot of time doing all these random different tasks, but you don't have any one thing that's taking up. Usually, kind of where this starts, right, is people say, yeah, if you have this one thing that's taking up 80% of your time, go automate that. But what really happens in real life is you have 100 things that are all taking up 1% of your time. So
Mhm.
where's the first like method of attack of where's the plan where you say, okay, I should focus on putting a process in place for X when you have a lot of different little things.
Yeah, so good question. And I mean, it really comes to, eventually you want to get everything to be, documented and, systemized. And, like I'm the kind of person, like uh, I understand and recognize the value of, organization in a business, but like me personally, like my like natural role is more like big picture and ideas. And so like I'm someone who's had to learn and kind of strengthen that muscle and adapt, to be better organized and, kind of building these systems. And so, I think honestly, like it's most important is just starting. Like if there are any, whatever things that you're doing, say customer service, I mean, that's a pretty easy one to, start to delegate and like just start jotting down, notes that could be parts of SOPs. And like, so I'm really good at getting like, 80/20 SOPs and like, me personally kind of creating and like, so 80/20 meaning, um, just kind of like addressing the most common, questions or responses or just like, even if it's just like a start or part of it, like that's fine. It doesn't need to be, formatted perfectly. It can literally just be like a document where you just write down bullet points of like, oh, quite this common question, this response, or like, and so just like starting something to then have to then eventually go and hire someone that can take at least like some of the foundation that you've put together to then step into that role. And so I think to I guess, yeah, back to your question, like most important is just like pick anything, whatever's going to be like the most important is just starting, um, and as you go through your day, just kind of being aware of like what activities you're actually doing, and to then start creating processes around how to do that. And one thing that I use and that is way easier for me is recording like Loom videos or like screencasts. And so I much prefer to whatever task you're doing, uploading a new product, for example. Um, you just, when you do it one time, record a video talking through what you're doing. And like that is a great, 80/20 foundational piece that you can use to then give to someone else to then eventually get that off your plate.
Yeah, it's funny. Loom, that's a great tip there. I love any email I can't answer in like 2 sentences. I'm like, all right, let's do a Loom video, or I'm just gonna sit there and I use Loom literally to like respond to emails at this point. Just if I can't do it in the 2 sentences, I just get on the camera and start talking. But same thing with like building that into an SOP, so standard operating procedure. St- that concept of just starting, right? I feel like that's where people get hung up, where they see, okay, it takes all these steps. It's like 100 steps to do this, and it would take the entire day to write that document out. But I think what people don't realize is just start with anything. Like just write like the outline, like the top like 3 bullets, and at least now the SOP is there, and you can start, and then you can run through that with someone and keep adding it as you go, and then you have a place to actually start like collecting these ideas, right? It's just
Yeah.
not like, you're getting every day is you're gonna get better. You're gonna move forward
Mhm.
doing it that way.
Totally. And I think people get caught up in something that prevents people from moving forward is, this notion that like, they have this idea of processes or systems and like it needs to be, totally, completely fleshed out and, identifying and addressing, any variable situation. And like, I mean, eventually that could be a good, place to get to, but, to start, it's just like just start anywhere, like a little screencast around, any part of the process, just like anything that, the easiest place to just document so that you can then just start passing things off, kind of, one at a time and then like also passing more of the burden of completing or perfecting the processes to whoever you pass it off to, to keep that ball moving forward. And yeah, just knowing that like you person like it doesn't need to be perfect. Done is better than perfect. And yeah, just kind of starting to knock them out is gonna allow you to start building some momentum.
So when we talk about systems and kind of people and processes, is the SOP the kind of the core of this, or are there other ways to kind of bake in processes into the business flow?
I mean, one thing that's worked, I guess, well for me is, hiring people that are better at the, role or task than I am. And so, in my team and when my, e-commerce business was getting started, I hired someone who, and so, supply chain or finance, again, like these are areas that, at first I was, doing or was, more involved with. And then like I went and hired people that actually were, more experienced and better at those, at those areas than I was. And so they then were able to come in and like, they actually, like I had some processes in place of, how I was doing things, but pretty quickly they were able to come in and just like improve and do them better because they know those areas a lot better than I do. And so yeah, like, it's, I guess there's broadly, two types of hires, the ones that are just following your instructions, following your SOPs, and then there's the ones that come in and actually like understand the tasks, better than you do potentially. And so they can, like implement, better processes that you might not even, know or understand, but like they do. And so, so you can kind of get your processes that way as well.
Yeah, one thing that actually, one additional way I found to do that, it's been kind of neat, is paying for outside like trainings or courses, and then giving them to people in the organization and saying, "Here, let's look at this other process and see how that worked, and just implement it here." So it's kind of like this little trick of basically you don't need to hire someone, you don't need to come up with every process, you don't need to hire someone for every process. You can just kind of basically buy the process from someone else and then implement them in your business. And I've kind of found that to
Yeah.
be a decent strategy as well with this.
Yeah, totally. I'm, a big fan of, buying courses for my team and we'll definitely like, encourage them. Like I like to kind of give like high level objectives and projects and like, sometimes these are things that like my team, I mean, I've got a great team, but also I'll like give them projects that they might not have experience with. And so like I'll tell them like, all right, like I know you might not know this, but like, here's a book, you know, look for courses on it and like find whatever resources you need and like I'll pay for them so that you can then learn them and yeah, helps us all.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I feel like when people talk about like courses in e-commerce, there's a lot of like snake oil, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of very tactical things that aren't even, like how to start an e-commerce business. Like aren't like that, but they're how to do bookkeeping and this like they're very specific and tactical, and you can walk away with basically like a process in a box of okay, this is what we're gonna do. Let's just implement this today, and it's just this. Now you just have a set of steps you can run through, and I found that to be an effective way of kind of I don't know, like shortcutting this whole process building of just purchasing these very tactical processes to
Mhm.
implement.
Yeah, all about getting as much help as possible. And so I think courses are a good way to do that. No need to reinvent the wheel.
So let's say when you stop building these SOPs, you stop building this, library, bunch of different documents, or however you kind of, let's say, I don't know, you store them, however you store them, right? How do you know that people are actually following them? How do you make sure that, how do you make sure they're actually like not being just done correctly, but let's say over time you start, you're finding flaws in these, but when folks start running through them, at some point they almost memorize them, right? So you don't have to actually follow the process anymore, but you want to keep changing it. So you do want people to run through it, right? Because you want to evolve the process, but as people get good at it, they don't need to look at every single step. So how do you do it where people are still running through it each time so that when you make changes, they actually follow them?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that we do on that is for the different SOPs in the different processes, they each have like an owner, and so like, and that owner is overwhelmingly not me personally, and so so that's kind of one thing of like having giving someone ownership over the process and setting the expectation that yeah, like there's a good system in place at the moment, but the objective isn't to just kind of maintain, it's to continue improving. And something that I know you can and probably should do, although it also gets challenging, and including myself and with my business haven't been able to like fully implement, but adding like KPIs to the different SOPs. And so say it's customer service and you have the SOPs, and a KPI could be like messages answered in an hour, or time that it takes to do to finish the customer service in a day, or average response per message, or you can kind of bake in these metrics, and and then use that, and whoever owns the SOP, you also come up with these KPIs and metrics, and then set goals for them. And so it's not just to maintain whatever the KPI. It's like there's goals to continue to improve it.
Okay, and then that way I feel like they kind of have to like execute this process every time, because what you don't want, right, is someone to kind of memorize the process and then run off and just do it out of memory, because then that starts to you start to basically build your own process at that point, and you don't want them building their own process. You want them modifying the existing process, right? So is there a way to prevent that?
I mean, the best thing that I can kind of think of is having the right people. So I'm a huge like like I said, I kind of default to hiring. I love team building. I've got a great team, and yeah, like I know that's something also that some people, it's kind of like you get your belief creates your reality. And so on one hand, I know there are, and know people that they just think and assume that the people that are working for them are gonna mess it up, or they're not gonna improve it. And like they tend to find people that are working in their business that fit that description. Whereas if it's like if and you come into it knowing, and prioritizing finding the right people that are aligned with the business goals and objectives, and the culture fit, that yeah, like they just understand what you're trying to do and the objectives of the business, and so yeah, that'll prevent them from kind of like cutting corners, so to speak, or not following or improving the processes.
Yeah, I feel like there's certain people that are very like the processes make them actually feel better, and there's other people that like if you tell them to follow a process, they immediately like freak out and like get very upset about it. It's like almost like this like black and white thing, this like dividing line, and there's people who are either love process or absolutely hate them.
Yeah, totally. And so I'm a big fan of like personality types and personality tests. And, we've got a pretty robust hiring process and lots of questions and follow-up questions and test projects. And anyway, one of the questions that I always ask is about Myers-Briggs personality type. And which, I don't know, that one I'm just kind of personally kind of deep dove into. And anyway, the Myers-Briggs, there's four different kind of traits, and the last one is, P's and J's. And, the short of it is like P's are much more kind of like, lots of ideas, big picture, less structure. And then the J's are the more like organized, process kind of, oriented people. And, for me, I'm naturally very much a P. And so because of that, like I know that, I pretty much exclusively hire J's on my team that like are organized, are just kind of like naturally lean into the organization, lean into the process. And, overall, I mean, it works for, me and our team, but yeah, and you want to, I think it's important to have people that, I mean, it's better to, in a lot of situations, to have people that enjoy process and really like, thrive with structure. But then on the other hand, sometimes I'll kind of catch myself where, like I'm the kind of person that I just kind of figure things out and, move pretty quickly. And it's just like, maybe it says to do it this way, but as I'm kind of doing it, you figure something else out and just kind of like, move things forward. And so sometimes when I'm, giving projects, it's a little bit ambiguous or this or that. And like some people on my team, they'll come back and like they really, need more, and understandably like need more, structure and, process in order to execute on these things. And so, yeah, like sometimes I guess just like have to, adjust to be able to, effectively work with the team and understand what they need, understand, how you tend to act or how you do naturally. And then, sometimes mold and adapt to, give the team also what they need to be effective.
Hmm. So if you're a cowboy, you don't want to hire too many other cowboys because it's going to be just an
Sounds like
army.
it'd be a mess.
Yeah, just going to be a mess of people doing their own thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that about the Myers-Briggs because I think that there's actually some like truth in that, right? Where you can find out your personality type, and then what you can do with that is just your strengths, but you also know your weaknesses, right? That you can move, fast and loose, but then okay, when it comes to building a process, maybe that's not your strength, or even following a process. So that allows you to
Yeah.
hire for those kind of blind spots.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I love the personality type stuff. And that's like, on our team, like we talk about that a lot. Um, and like I'm just very honest and transparent and open with my team. And a lot of them have been working for me for years. So like, they know me really well and I know them. And, they know that like sometimes I can be, unorganized or erratic or, change my mind or, this get excited about a lot of things. And like, we've just worked together for a long enough time that like they know how I operate, I know them, and yeah, like overwhelmingly they can, balance me out. Like, they know how I operate, and we work well together, and so they know that, I need them to be like a balance, to, how I am in certain ways for the business to run and yeah, just not be a mess.
Got it. Yeah. So one final question before I let you run, because I know everyone kind of loves to geek out on the tools that you use to this. I feel like every time you talk about processes, there's the folks that they're like, hey, I just have this like text document that runs the entire there's like one like this one text file, and it like runs the organization. And then other folks have these like complicated like Zapier workflow things that they're like, I have a Zap with like 9,000 steps in it. where do you kind of A, where do you fall in that, and then B, I guess if you do fall more towards the tools, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I'd say the overwhelming of our operations stack is going to fall on Slack. Asana is what we use for project and task management, and then Google Drives is where we store things. And so yeah, that's what works to put it together. One thing that we recently implemented that might be useful for your listeners is having a freelancer account for a freelancer Gmail as well as Slack and Asana, because we have this thing like going through a handful of hires and some of them stick and some of them don't, and having to create new logins for everyone if they're not sure how long they're going to be around. It just like becomes a pain. And so that's one thing that we've been doing
It
or
sounds
have
like
done.
you need a process for that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the process we got the freelancer account
Yep. No, I like
to
that.
yeah, so that they can if someone's in like we do when we hire, there's always like test projects and trial periods, and so we can give people access to what they need, but don't have to go through the hassle of setting up new accounts for everyone. And that, of course, like Asana can get expensive depending on how many team members you have, and the more team members, the more expensive. And so yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so you're more in keep some documents, but you don't have to go too crazy with this. Because I think some people fall that everything has to be like this like perfect workflow automation.
Yeah,
Everyone's kind
I
of
mean,
different.
yeah, I mean, I'm big on the 80/20 rule, and so doing like enough that it's effective, but yeah, like I said, like I'm not naturally the most like detail oriented person, and so for me, I'm all about effectiveness, 80/20, and like yeah, like our system, it works, and also fortunately, I have people under me on my team that like are better organized, so that allows me to come in and kind of like brain dump on a bunch of Asana tasks, and then like people come in and we'll like actually clean it up, add clarity, add deadlines, make sure it's like appropriately assigned. And so yeah, that kind of works for me and our team. But again, it's also because having the right people around you to support you and however you like to operate.
Awesome. All right. I think that's super helpful. If people want to find you, kind of see what you're working on, what can they do so?
Yeah, you can check us out on sellerplex.com. And one thing that we've been doing, and to kind of like a first offer to help businesses, is implementing a operations audit. And so if you go to sellerplex.com/audit, you can go and find out information there where we can run you through basically like the core systems and processes to be able to have a scalable as well as exitable business. So like the stuff we were talking about, core SOPs documented, effective supply chain so you're not overspending, and foundational finance so that you know your numbers, on top of your numbers, can be on top of what you need so that you can grow to whatever outcome you are uh, aiming for. So uh,
Awesome. Yeah.
yeah, happy to chat, reach out, anything we can do to help, or just love chatting to other cool ecom owners, and happy to help if we can.
Cool. Thank you. I will definitely link to all that in the show notes. So thanks a lot for coming on today. Appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.